Home repairs and solutions.
It's a Thursday morning time now for Home Repairs and Solutions with Mary and Mark generally, and Mark will be back. And this is brought to you by Spring Mountain Air Heating and Air Conditioner, your local Amanda dealer. And now here is Mary Pearson. And Mary, I think last time you told me Mark, maybe not too far in the future, he'll be back on the show.
I hope maybe next week.
We're
going to see.
We'll shoot for it and see what happens.
We hope he'll be back next week.
Anyway,
because we sure miss him.
Glad to have you here. You bet.
Well, thanks, Dan. It's always fun to be here. Welcome to the Home Repairs and Solutions Show. Thanks for being with us today. Before we start here, I'm going to give out the numbers. So if someone has a question for our guest or for me, or if you just have a comment you'd like to make today, you can reach us here at 417-862-9977 or 1-800-375-0056. And we're in for a really fun show today. I have a great guest with me. We've been visiting for a little bit before the show. And her name is Cheryl Rust, and she's with Invisible Fence. And so I know we have a lot of listeners out there that have pets, dogs, cats, and maybe some different type of pets as well.
Sure.
And so it's great to have you on the show today, Cheryl. Thanks for coming.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. You know, a lot of people don't know what Invisible Fence actually is, and they always kind of come up to me and go, does that really work? Well, yeah, it does. How we do Invisible Fence is we define the boundaries by a radio wave, and we train your dog to understand the warning that the receiver collar makes to keep them safe, secure at home.
See, when I called you to be on the show, I was trying to think of things that maybe would appeal to some of our listeners, and I have a pet. Most people that listen to me know that I have a Bichon named Tucker, and I just love him just like he was one of my children almost. And so I was thinking about what could, who could I have on that could help people with pet situations, and so that's when I found you, and decided that you would probably be a great guest and be real interesting for the folks who are listening to us today.
Well, especially for remodeling and things like that. I mean, it's so important for people that have pets to be responsible for them and keep them from running all over the neighborhood. And with Invisible Fence, you can do that without having any visible sign of a fence. And to me, that allows a lot of flexibility for a homeowner. And we can do all kinds of things that conventional fencing really can't do. So inside the house as well as out. But let me give you, for instance, you've done $15,000 worth of landscaping, and it's in the backyard, and your dog starts digging holes in your landscaping. We can loop all that area off and keep the dog out, but yet let him run around in the yard and have freedom. So that's kind of a phenomenal thing too.
That would be cool if you could keep the squirrels out too.
Yeah, well, we'll have to work on that because it's a little hard to put collars on them.
On all those squirrels. Yeah, that might not work too well, but I have more trouble with squirrels than I do dogs, but there are some dogs who do like to dig in the flower bed and all that type of thing.
Especially if you have water gardens.
Yes.
You get a lab puppy and you've got this beautiful water garden with lilies and everything.
And labs love water.
Oh, yeah.
So they think you put in a private pool.
I know. I know. So we can loop all that off and still have the dog run around in the yard. And you can still have your lilies in the pond.
There you go. That's a great idea. We have a caller already. We have Lori on the line. Good morning, Lori.
Hello.
Do you have a question for Cheryl?
Yes, I have a problem with my dog whenever I leave for work in the morning that he gets in the trash. And I guess it's just like an anxiety thing that he doesn't want to be alone, but he like tears the whole inside of the house up. And I was wondering if she had anything for that.
Yeah. Well, what I would suggest from an Invisible Fence standpoint, we have indoor units that throw a field around different areas, and it's for just that. It's to keep them kind of curbed under certain situations. And what Invisible Fence will do is we'll put an indoor unit underneath like the garbage can and throw a field around it. So when the dog tries to get in the garbage can, it makes an audible tone and it'll correct him if he tries to penetrate that invisible field. And we can curb that behavior there. We can do it on countertops, off tables, out of couches, out of rooms. Those indoor units are great from a behavioral tool. So that's a very good question, and thank you, Lori.
Oh, thank you. It sounds like a great thing. I'll give you a call and set up an appointment.
Awesome. Yay! I'm getting business.
There you go. Well, since she wants to give you a call, maybe you should give out your phone number.
Yeah, our telephone number is 753-2943 or 1-800-658-0448. And we have a web site, so invisiblefence.com.
So if they go on the website, they can also request, there's a request for service or something on there they can do.
You can go in and individualize. We usually do it by zip code so we can do a coding thing. But yeah, go right it to the website, put your zip code in, and we'll return the telephone call and get you set up for an appointment.
Now, when we were talking earlier, you said you've been doing this for quite a while. So I would say you are probably the expert in the area for invisible fencing.
You know, I started it before anybody even knew what invisible fence really was. That was back in 1988. So I've been doing it for quite a while, and I've learned a lot, too, in those years. We find that pets, every given situation, it's all about individualizing and customizing your needs. So I always go to the customer's home, meet with them in their environment, meet the dog, and then we sit down and customize the proper way of keeping them contained. And I look at things like the indoor stuff. If I see scratches on the door or windows or torn up things, I ask them and say, hey, we can help you with that. So it's not just putting a fence in. It's a big customized thing that we can do inside as well as out.
And see, until we were talking a little bit before the show, I had no idea you could even do anything inside at all.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, that is a great tool for people, because sometimes dogs do have separation anxiety or different things that they go through if they're left at home alone. So I don't leave my dog. I'm fortunate enough that I can bring Tucker with me to the office, and so he goes with us pretty much everywhere we go. So he's very, very, very seldom left at home ever, or by himself. So, but I know that not everyone can do that.
Yeah, and from a dog trainer perspective, I suggest you get your pet kennel trained. I mean, as a puppy, get a kennel, train them in the kennel, so that way when you're gone, you can put them in that area, and they think it's home away from home. They'll just go in there and snuggle in and be okay. That's my first suggestion versus letting them run all over the house, because they can do a lot of damage.
Sure, they can. So you're not just someone who can put in an invisible fence and protect the yard. You are actually a dog trainer as well.
I do a lot of dog training, or I either train the owners to train the dog, which is a really, the dogs are easy. It's the owners that sometimes can be a little tough.
Well, we talked about that when Tucker was little. I took him to puppy class. I'd never done that before. And finally, at the end of the class, I realized the training was more for me than for him. So I learned a lot taking him there. So that helped me be able to establish the fact that I'm the alpha.
Yep.
Because we talked that dogs are packs.
Yep.
They're a pack animal. And so typically there's a leader. Well, I learned that I needed to be the leader. And so there were different things that they taught me in the class that made me be able to train him properly so that I could be the leader. And so I'm like the alpha female, I guess, or whatever. I'm the alpha dog in our house. But so all of that is important things to know and to learn. And so it's great that you can help people maybe correct issues like that, correct problems, or kind of trying to help them a little bit in the training aspect as well.
You're exactly right. This isn't something that you just put in and then you walk away and your dog's contained. There's a whole process. We really deal with more of the pet training than anything else, because not only do we put this in, but we hold your hand through the whole training process. I prefer that the family train the dog, because dogs are a pack, and you have to kind of integrate invisible fence in that family spectrum. Mm-hmm. So that's really good. But then I hold your hand through the whole process, and we usually have good results. Now, if someone is physically unable to do that, we'll go on and train the dog. But I would prefer family cooperation, because everybody learns something in there. The dogs are learning on invisible fence, and then the family's learning how to train the dog, which is a whole nother spectrum in the whole process.
So when someone is interested in maybe having an invisible fence, or thinks that maybe it would be something to be beneficial to them, you also, when you come out, you like you said, you first meet with the family, you meet the pet, and then you, like you were telling me, you profile this pet.
Yeah, I go through kind of a 55-question profile, and it's just to get more information. But it's so important for us to know the animal or the pet that we're dealing with, and that way I can give them the proper correction level and train them. Like, for instance, if I had a real old dog that couldn't hardly move around, I'd give that dog a lot more audible sound so they can turn around to get out of the field. Or if I've got a real jumpy, let's say a greyhound that's really fast, I'm going to administer the audible sound and correction completely different than I would that particular older dog. So it's all about fitting the needs of the dog too.
One of the other things that we talked about earlier was that you can use this same fence for multiple dogs. So if someone has more than one dog, and let's say they have a little Maltese and they have a German Shepherd or whatever it might be, then you have to train both of those dogs differently because they're going to have different responses to what's going on. But you can use the same fence for multiple dogs.
Yeah, what we do is we will customize the receiver collar. It's all individual. So I can program one receiver collar for, let's say, a Great Dane, and then turn around and do a little dog, a Chihuahua, and have a completely different profile and customize that receiver collar for the Chihuahua and cats and whatever else we want to put on it.
Yeah, we talked about that. I think most people think about containing a dog, but that's one of the questions I have for you. I said, can you use it on other animals as well? And one of the things you did mention was cats, because cats tend to be more of a roaming animal sometimes than a dog, and they like to roam more at night. So you've had success with cats. We've even talked about pygmy goats.
Yep.
Pot-bellied pigs, any type of pet that you might have that you want to confine in an area, you can probably work with an invisible fence and contain that animal in your yard or wherever it is you're wanting to contain it, and give it room to play or do whatever it wants to do.
We can do just about any animal that there is as long as they understand basic conditioning. So that's real important. Now, I wouldn't suggest for all you chicken lovers, don't. The collars are a little. Well, you can, but I wouldn't suggest it because there's a cost value in there. But for your pets overall and cats especially, I love when someone calls and say I have a cat and I want to keep them contained. I'm like, woo, your neighbors are going to love you. That's great because cats roam everywhere.
Sure, they do, and one of the things that we were talking about is you said that over time, because you've done this for several years now, that technology has really improved and the fencing and the wiring and stuff you use is so much better than it used to be. So tell me how do you put the wire in? How do you install it? What do you hook it to? How does it all
put together?
Yeah.
Well, what we do is we lay it in with a carbide tip. It's a tiller, but it has a carbide tip blade, and we just cut in the ground about 2.5 to 3.5 inches and lay the wire and all together. We'll go across the concrete driveways through the expansion joints, and you won't even see it. We make an incision in the concrete, and then we lay a siliconized cement filler across there so you can't see it, and anywhere we can put it pretty much. And we go all the way around the yard or where we want the dogs to stay out of, and there's a design or a pattern that we usually use. There's no specific way to do it. We don't have to go all the way around the yard, but we would prefer, since I come out there, I customize it to fit your needs, and that's how we lay it in. And after we get the transmitter mounted in the garage, we hook it all up, then we start the training. We flag the yard, and there's probably about a 14-day, 3 weeks training that we do. It just depends on how much time you have to spend with your dog. The important thing is you spending time with your dog. If you can do that, our time frame gets cut down by quite a bit.
And the training part of this is, like you were telling me, is first that you start with the audible first. And so what it does is this collar, if they try to cross the fencing, there's some sort of sound, I guess, or something that emits. Do you hear that sound?
Yeah,
too?
You can hear the sound, yes. But we train them to listen to the sound because that's the warning. And if they don't heed the warning, then they get the discipline part, which is the correction.
Okay.
So, and it's all about the way we introduce this whole new concept to them because they've got to learn it. So we've got to kind of train them according to their level of understanding. So if they are slow, we go slow. If they learn really quick, we go a lot faster. So it just depends on the individual.
And so the reason for this training process is because you don't want to freak your dog out. You don't
know-
want to put a fence in, put a collar on them, have them run around like they usually did, and they're constantly getting this shock thing
It's
because
not-
they don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, hello, it's just not fair to the dog,
Yeah.
That's the important thing. And I know a lot of people out there do not want their dog to, oh my gosh, I don't want to shock their dog. Well, come to me because I'm the professional. I'll get it done in a way that the dog will understand, and it won't be this drastic, scary thing because we don't want it that way either.
We have another caller holding on the line. Bobby, good morning. Are you there?
Yeah, good morning, ladies.
Good
Hey,
morning.
I got a question.
Sure.
My wife, she's got 2 poodles,
Mhm.
and now I got a question on that invisible fence. Okay,
Mhm.
now say they get out of the perimeter or whatever you call it.
Mhm.
Now can they get back in without getting shocked?
No. And the key to this whole thing is they never get out. That's the important thing because with the proper training and conditioning, and if you check the fence on a regular basis, they probably won't get out. I mean, we have a really high containment rate, which is like 99.5%. And as long as you're consistent with this fence, they're not getting out. But if they do get out, they're going to have to come back in, and they're going to have to get shocked to come back in. It doesn't distinguish
yeah.
it.
My wife's the dogs. They're not the smartest dogs in the world. So I wasn't sure. Now if they do get out, can you take the collar off and beat it with them? Beat it with them. The collar. Will that?
Oh
will
my
that
gosh!
work?
Well,
you don't want to
know,
beat your dogs.
Well, here's the thing. If you don't want your dog to get shocked coming back in, you take the collar off, and then you can walk your dog through the field without getting a correction unless you want to wear it.
Okay. Now, can I put it on my wife?
You know,
Will that keep
Not
her
if you
out
want
or
to
in?
stay married.
no, you can keep her home if you want, but you might have some repercussions on that.
Okay. Well, thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Bobby.
We'd actually talked about before the show. I said, that might be good to put on some of your children. You can't get them to stay home. You just put that collar on them and they can't get out of the yard. But that probably isn't a good idea either.
No.
Family services would probably come to see you if you tried something like that.
Yeah.
You might want to just contain this to your pets, even though I'm sure some people have some other ideas.
You can be creative on where you want to put the collar, and there's probably lots of parties that people have gotten shocked because of it. But go to YouTube. There's some really funny stories because people have done some crazy things with invisible fence.
I'm sure they have. I wouldn't want to put one on and get shocked, but you can. You can tone it though. Like you said, a smaller dog isn't going to get quite the jolt as a bull mastiff or something like that. That isn't going to feel it if you don't turn it up a little bit.
It's all about the profile and me coming out and meeting with you and your dog. I know that with Bobby, his wife's probably afraid of getting their dog shocked, but the key thing is with our fence and the way we have the capability of programming and profiling, those dogs won't get out. It'll be really good, and they won't get a correction either. And that's the key to the whole thing, is keeping them safe and secure without really being so abrasive that they're fearful.
Yes, and we talked about that a little bit earlier too. Is that every once in a while, though, you might have a dog who might try to penetrate the fence, and he gets shocked, and then it scares them, and then now they don't want to get off the front porch. So that's an issue too that you can work with people on if they have a dog that gets so scared of it for some reason that now he won't now he won't even get in the yard.
Right. And that's why we're here. I make sure that when you buy Invisible Fence, you become part of the Invisible Fence family, and you can always call, but if we have a dog that sits on the porch, what we do is we just show him where safe area is and build his confidence, because they have egos just like we do. And so once they get shocked, they kind of draw in. We have to bring them back out to their normal self, and you just work with the dog and show them where the safe area is. And the next thing you know, they'll be running out in the yard in no time.
just running and playing, but then then they know where the boundaries
Yeah,
are.
and a little bit has to do with the training part of it. You know, if we do the protocol on the training and do what we say we're going to do and go out there and spend time with your dog, you don't have really those issues with, porch sitters.
Is there any time when maybe someone is looking at maybe putting an invisible fence in, and you go out and you profile the dog and you look at the situation? Is there any time where you don't put the fence in for someone? Are there certain situations that you say this isn't the right thing?
I do it all the time. If they have a small yard, it's not good for the dog. You have to give them an area to exercise and build. Dogs have to run and play. If they don't, all it does is it's kind of like having a kid feed them sugar. They just get so excited that they develop bad habits and they start chewing on things and stuff like that. And if I go to a yard that has a 10 by 10 yard, I can't really help them because they need more area for that. So, or the owner needs to take them to the dog park a lot.
Sure.
Another thing that I deal with is if I profile this dog, if I think that the dog is going to have a lot of aggression, will bite somebody, I'm not going to put him on the fence. I really feel strong about that. That's a liability issue, and all it's going to do is cause you, the pet owner, a lot of problems because you don't want biting dogs.
That's true. And then maybe if you have one that's kind of aggressive and you have that type of situation and they're not tied up or something, because usually you think of an aggressive dog or mean dog being behind a physical fence or
Right.
tied up. So that might give someone the false sense that it's a friendly dog when it's not or something. And so I can see how that would cause some problems.
What we do is if I think we're going to have issues, we can configure invisible fence about any way. But what I do is if I think that we're going to have, that the owner needs more control of their dog, I'll do what we call an hourglass shape and keep the dog in the backyard. And then if he's out front, he's under supervision with the owner. So that way we can kind of curb any bad behavior. Because the key to biting dogs is that they've gotten by with it.
Sure.
And so if the owner's right there with them to correct them and to show them the right way to do it and curb that bad behavior, you're going to find that the dog's going to be a lot better off in the long run, and especially if they're young dogs.
That would be the easiest time to train him, I would think. So that was one of my questions we didn't talk about earlier. Well, we might have to wait for that question. Dan just signaled time for a break. I can't believe we're at the break already.
Wow.
So thanks for being with us today. Come back and we'll talk some more about invisible fencing and pets and whatever else you want to talk about today.
Journal Report. I'm Jennifer Gishinka. While consumers, healthcare companies, and politicians anxiously await the Supreme Court's decision on the healthcare overhaul, one thing is certain: healthcare reform is here to stay. Smart Money's Jan Viechner suggests putting money in companies that are preparing for a wave of aging baby boomers and ballooning costs.
There's a lot of companies that are trying to make procedures that help people get better faster, reduce infections, because if you can get better faster, that will save a lot of money.
A couple of favorite stocks are J&J, which is positioned to sell basic medical necessities to the world's growing middle class, and Sanofi, which has good cash flow. Darden's quarterly earnings rose 10% as the casual dining company saw a slight increase in sales, but shares are down 1.5% as the owner of Red Lobster and Olive Garden projected continued weak growth. On Wall Street, the Dow Industrials up 44 points at 12,617. The Nasdaq's up 10, the S&P 500 up 3. This is the Wall Street Journal Report.
Safelite Repair, Safelite Replace.
Ryan, technician with Safelite Auto Glass.
So you think all auto glass companies are the same? Well, they're not. With Safelite, you get more. Every windshield we replace is backed by a national lifetime guarantee, keeping you covered wherever you are. Plus, Safelite has more glass in stock than anyone, so we can get to you faster.
Just tell your insurance company you want Safelite, or call us at 1-800-800-2727, or go to safelite.com.
The Olympic Games are almost here. On July 27th, the Summer Olympic Games are coming to the historic city of London. Watch the world's greatest athletes and see the world at its best.
Misty May and Kerry Walsh, gold medal champions.
With unforgettable moments and stories.
Usain Bolt winning by daylight. History for Michael Phelps.
Don't miss the biggest television event of the year, the London Olympic Games, beginning July 27th on NBC.
Here's news on the Ozarks News Network. A Miller County deputy is facing drug charges following a crash near Eldon. 29-year-old Paul Hill of Rocky Mount was arrested when meth and drug paraphernalia were found in his car after the crash on Hayes Drive. The state of Missouri ranks near the bottom in the amount spent on elementary and secondary students. Missouri ranked 39th in a Census Bureau study of the 2009-2010 school year at just over $10,000 per student. Arkansas ranked number 38. The District of Columbia spent the most per pupil. And the Missouri Department of Health is warning people to prepare to avoid heat-related illnesses. Last year, 47 Missourians died from heat exhaustion and heat stroke. People between the ages of 45 and 75 are most vulnerable. For the Ozarks News Network, I'm Arlen Summers.
Hi, I am Isabel Walker.
And I am Todd Thomas. We are brokers with Eagle Management and Realty One. We have been featured on such programs as NPR Morning Edition and ABC News and World Report.
We will help answer questions like, why is my home underwater? What do I do if I am facing foreclosure? And we will explain terms like HAMP, HARP, HAFA, and short sales.
Tune in the second and fourth Tuesdays at 10 o'clock to hear our program.
This is Jim James. The choice of an attorney is too important to make based solely on advertising. You've seen or heard this at the end of all lawyer advertising, but it's true. If you want to learn more about making the right choice, or just want to let me know what you think about our civil court system, our juries, or judges, tune in to Legally Speaking with Jim James every other Tuesday, alternating with the Ferris Mortgage Hour at 2 p.m., right after Rush on KWTO AM 560, the talk of the Ozarks.
There's a pretty darn good pizza parlor in town. They make everything from scratch, with homemade crust, fresh meats and vegetables, and 100% real mozzarella. Where are you going to find it? Right inside a gas station. Casey's General Store, a convenience store, and a whole lot more. Right now, you can get free cheese breadsticks with the purchase of any large pizza.
Hi, I'm Brad Ferris. Did you know a recent Gallup poll that 58% of Americans are worried about their ability to maintain their current standard of living into and throughout their retirement years? Find out how your current mortgage may be costing you your retirement. Yes, a mortgage guy telling you to get out of debt. Find out more on the Ferris Mortgage Hour, Tuesdays at 2 o'clock, right after Rush Limbaugh.
Join KTXR Saturday, June 30th for another trip to Branson. We'll meet at noon in the Kmart parking lot at Kearney and Glenstone, then head to the Clay Cooper Theater for the 2 o'clock Red Hot and Blue show. Dinner will be at the Bob Evans Restaurant, then it's shopping at the Branson Craft Mall. Then back to the theater for the 8 o'clock show to see Clay Cooper perform. Tickets are just $39 per person. Reserve your seats today. Call 862-3751 during business hours. 862-3751.
Not as humid with mostly sunny skies today, high of 86, clear tonight, low 63. Plenty of sunshine and warm again tomorrow, high of 90 as we start the weekend, a low tomorrow night 67. Mostly sunny, hot and humid heading into Sunday, high 95, low for your Sunday night 74. As you head back to work on Monday, it will be partly sunny and humid, high of 88. Partly sunny and a pleasant day on Tuesday, high 85. I'm AccuWeather's Jason Lord.
83 degrees in Springfield.
Well, I went down to the hardware store to see my old friend Bob. I said my roof it leaks, my rug's a mess, and my front door needs a new knob. I got squirrels in my attic, I got bats in my head. Well, Bob just leaned over the counter and he shook his head and said, you need home repairs and solutions. Home repairs and solutions. They'll fix your windows, they'll fix your house, they'll even tell you how to get rid of a mouse. Home repairs and solutions.
And you're listening to Home Repairs and Solutions, brought to you by Spring Mountain Air Heating and Air Conditioning, your local Amanda dealer. And once again, here is your host, Mary Pearson, and her guest for today.
Thank you very much, Dan, and welcome back, everyone. Thanks for being with us on the second part of the show. If you just joined us, we're talking with Cheryl Rust of Invisible Fence. So we're talking to all of you dog lovers and pet lovers out there who might need a little bit of assistance in protecting your dog or helping keep them in an area where you want them to be. Something that I thought was interesting is when you were talking about earlier, the first part of the show, where your containment with your invisible fence is very high, like 99.5%, compared to a traditional fence of some kind, whether it's a privacy fence or a chain link, there's only about 80%.
Yeah, and
is that correct?
That's
containment?
Correct. You're correct about that, Mary. And the reason for that is because dogs can dig out from under conventional fencing or jump over it, or someone leaves a gate open and they take off. So, statistically, we're trying to go from not just keeping them contained, but we go to another level, because what we try to do is allow the dogs to make good or bad choices, and we modify their territory, and they realize that, hey, this is the area that I'm supposed to be in, and they just hone into that and stay in that yard. So, if you don't have the collar on or you leave it off, they'll still stay in the yard. Now, I don't suggest you do that, because it could, over a period of time, the dog can leave the yard, but it's more of the natural boundary for them, and that's kind of dynamic in and of itself.
And you can also incorporate this in with someone who has a fence. So you can put it like underneath or next to an existing fence.
Sure.
To give them that extra layer of protection, especially if you have a dog. Now, my daughter lived in a neighborhood for a while where the dogs were constantly digging out underneath the fence. It just drove them nuts. Not just their dogs, but the neighbors' dogs. So pretty soon then they have all the dogs in the backyard, and it was just kind of a mess. So if you have this invisible fence there, chances are if they try to dig, they're going to get corrected.
Yep.
So that's going to deter that digging. Now, it's not going to keep the neighbor's dog from digging under your fence and getting in your backyard, correct?
Right.
But it's going to keep your dog from
right.
trying to dig out.
It's only receiver specific, so if they have a collar, then it'll react to it. But you're exactly right. 80% of our business is in conjunction with conventional fencing, because either they want to keep the dogs back away because they've got landscaping all the way around their backyard, or water gardens and stuff, or they're having issues with the dog actually escaping. And so that kind of complements that conventional fence. But we can also do your front yard too, and go on and loop it around your front yard, so that way if the front door gets open and your dog takes off, they're still safe and secure inside invisible fence.
One of the things we talked about was, one of the things I asked you earlier was on the collar itself, there's a battery in there, correct? That works off of the fence itself, or off of the radial waves off the fencing.
All that battery does is power the receiver collar, so that way it charges it and charges the capacitor for the correction and the audible tone. And it depends on how much the dog actually challenges the fence, how long the battery uses. We've got Invisible Fence brand has close to 2 million dogs on the fence, and statistically they say to change the battery for optimal performance once every 3 to 4 months on a regular basis, just to make sure that you don't have any dead batteries and the dogs escape. That's one of the things that we try to do with Invisible Fence, is to keep you on a battery plan, and we'll send you a battery about the time you need it, so that way there's continuity in the human error part of Invisible Fence.
Sure. And that's a good thing, because sometimes it's hard to remember stuff like that. To change the battery in the dog collar, I mean, that would be something that might not always be at the top of the mind awareness of the owner, because you have so much other stuff going on in your life. And so the last thing you want to do is put this fence in, let the battery go dead, and then your dog ends up escaping anyway.
Right.
So to have a maintenance program like that for the battery, I think is a great idea.
It's such a nice thing, because of the fact that you don't have to worry about it. It reminds you, and we have to renew it annually, but for the most part, it's kind of worry-free, and you don't have to worry about it. And that's just one little thing that needs to be done. And I tell people all the time, if you're not on a battery plan, keep a battery on hand at all times, so that way Friday night you're ready to go down to the lake, and you check the collar and the collar's bad, you got to have a source. Well, at 5 o'clock, you're going to have to run to the store and you want to go to the lake. It's just a big problem. So just keep one on hand for convenience sake.
We have another caller. We have Haley on the line. Good morning, Haley.
Good morning. I was wondering if if I want my dog to be able to go in the front yard and the backyard, but I don't want him to go all the way around, is there a way you can keep them so that they can't go all the way around?
With invisible fence, yes. What we do is an hourglass shape, and we use the house as the dividing line, and we'll bring the fence real close to the house, and that way you have a front yard and a backyard, but they can't go all the way around. And that's probably my favorite configuration because it gives you flexibility. You can let the dog out in the back and keep him back in the backyard, and only let him out in the front when you're available, like if you're playing or mowing the lawn or cleaning the garage. You can still have your pet in the front yard without, keeping an eye on him.
So I could, bring him through the house that way, and then... Perfect.
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
That was a good question.
Yes.
Some people, maybe for whatever reason, she doesn't want him in the side yard, so you can fix it to where they won't be. Maybe they have, like I said, maybe it's landscaped, or maybe there's something there they don't want him to get into or go through. So
there is nothing that invisible fence really can't do when it comes to stuff like that. We can put this in pretty much anywhere. It doesn't have to be buried in order to work. We can lay it on top. I've even got it on rock ledges down on Taneycomo. So that's
because you can't dig down there.
Yeah, yeah. And so, all those things, there's some capability that, conventional fencing, you can't put posts in rock, and we can do that and keep your pet in, which is phenomenal.
We have Stephanie on the line. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning.
Do you have a question? Yes. Do you have a question for Cheryl?
Yes, I do. I have a cat and a dog, but I want my cat to be able to get into another room, but I don't want my dog to get in there, and I'm tired of using baby gates. So is there a way that I can do it, have one, my cat on the invisible fence and my dog, but they can go in different rooms? Like I'll allow my dog to go in one room, but my cat not in that room, but my dog can go, or the other way around.
Stephanie, you know what? That is a great question. Yes, invisible fence can do that. We can individualize different pets to go in certain rooms and not in others. For instance, and since you have a cat and a dog, like kitty litter boxes, we can put an indoor unit and keep your dogs away from the kitty litter box, but yet allow the cat to go in and out, and both of them have receivers that they can run around. So we can specify different areas with different animals. It doesn't have to be breeds, but just if you've got one dog that you don't want in the kids' room and the other dog's okay, we can do that with Invisible Fence brand.
Okay. That's awesome.
And
all right.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Why don't you give out your phone number again, Cheryl, in case people didn't catch it the first time? How can they get a hold of you?
You can call Invisible Fence at the office and talk to Lori. Our number is 753-2943, and we have an 800 number, 1-800-658-0448. And our web address is invisiblefence.com, and you can contact us through that.
Lots of ways to get a hold of you. So
we love that. We want to get to meet everybody.
Now, when you go out to install this fence, can you typically install that in a day?
Actually, that's usually what we do. We put it in a day and immediately start the training. So your white flags come up and we start training the dog. And it takes a little bit of time to get them completely, running free in the yard. But our protocol is a step-by-step thing. So if the dog is kind of getting confused in any one of the steps, we slow down the training process until we get the right results.
And you're talking about putting white flags. Okay, where do you put those? Are those like at the corners of the fence boundary, or what is the white flags for?
We put it all the way around the yard or where we don't want the dog to go, because we're trying to condition them, and the flags are to help them identify with the boundary.
Okay.
It's a little bit different, but I try to stimulate all senses, sight and hearing, because there's an audible warning, and of course the touch part of it with the correction.
And so how long do the flags have to stay in the yard?
It depends on the training process. Typically about 3 weeks, and then you take every other flag of every other day and slowly drop that visual, so that way they realize that the fence, because if you take them all at once, the dog thinks, oh, it's the flags, and then they'll try to run off. So we try to slowly bring that down so that way the visual completely goes off and they key off the audible sound.
I see. Something else that we talked about earlier that I thought was really interesting and I had never thought about before is if people want to take their dog with them and they want to go camping somewhere or they're out, hanging out on the riverbank for a couple of days, they want to take their dog, you have a portable fence that will work off of the same collar.
Yeah, this is a real new concept, and I love it. We have a product that we use a lot for outside for landscaping. It's not really easy to get to, and it's called a rock. It'll do up to 145 lineal feet.
Okay.
And so people that are traveling or camping, what they do is they'll go to a campsite, lay the wire on top of the ground, staple it down with like ground staples, and then their dog is contained. They don't have to usually put the flags up, and it's really portable, so it's really great for people that are on the go.
Because I know a lot of people do travel with their pets and take them on vacation and different things, so that would be a great asset to take with you so that you wouldn't have to worry about your dog, or you don't have to tie them up because you're camping, and they can still have a space and they can enjoy being camping like everybody else in the family.
Yeah. Well,
so I'd never heard of that. I thought that was a really cool idea.
It is pretty awesome when it comes to that. Well, who wants to go camping and turn around and the whole weekend you're looking for your dog?
Yeah, that's not fun. Or put them in a kennel because they can't go because you don't have any way to maintain them or take care of them. So.
Exactly.
We have Angela on the phone. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
And do you have a question?
My question is, how long does the equipment actually last?
Well, that's a good question. Our product has what we call a lifetime manufacturer's warranty, which means that as long as you own the equipment, and you can even move it to a different location, you are warranted with Invisible Fence. So as long as you don't do physical damage to it, it will be warranted, and we will come out and maintain that product. If lightning hits it or something happens, we can maintain that particular product. So that is a very, very good question because not anybody else in the industry really has that kind of warranty like we do.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thanks for calling, Angela. I hadn't thought about that, but so if you have an invisible fence and you decide to move, I hadn't even thought of that till you said that. You can actually take that with you. So do you come out and actually physically move it for them, or how does that work?
What we usually do is we leave the wire in the ground, and they list it as being pre-wired for Invisible Fence.
Okay.
And then you take the hardware, which is the receiver collars and the transmitter, and take it to a new location.
Okay.
And put it in your new location, and we can put that in for you. But it saves you so much money because you can take it with you where you can't with a conventional fence. You can't. You got to leave it there. Of course.
Sure. So you don't necessarily take all the wiring out that's put in the ground.
You can, but we're not going to pull it out of the ground because we put it in. It's meant to, stay there.
It's meant to stay there. Sure.
But the hardware, you can move it wherever you go.
And you were telling me that the actual wire that you use now is so much better than you used to, and explain to our listeners what kind of wire you have and how the radio waves work now compared to what they used to do, because I thought this was pretty interesting.
Yeah, when I first started, we put the wire in that was recommended, and it was a stranded wire, and it didn't have an outside coating on it, and it really didn't last. And that's what you get with a lot of the box store stuff that you can get. It's not going to last for very long at all. So I researched it, and I've got a wire that's a solid core wire, and it has a 45 mil exterior coating on it, and that coating has a ultraviolet resin in it that resists breaking down, so it lasts a lot longer. So the specs on that particular wire is 20 years. Now, it'll last longer than that because when they do the specs, they're thinking electricity running through the wire, and we don't use electricity, so the rigidity of the wire is really going to be a lot better and last even longer than 20 years. So that part of it, we put in the best. So that way, from a maintenance standpoint, you're not going to have the headache of it breaking a lot.
Because you use a radio signal instead of
It's all
electricity.
Yeah, it's a frequency, exactly. And so you don't have electricity pulsing through this wire. It's just used as an antenna to send a signal around the perimeter of your property. And technology's changed. I mean, actually what we have in those receiver collars is the same technology that you have in your iPhones. So we have basically a computer hanging around a dog's neck, and it reads the frequency a millionth of a second, and it reads it twice for safety features. And it's very specific, and that is fabulous when it comes to technology.
And we were talking earlier about the collars. The collars are really very lightweight.
Yeah.
Because, you can't put a 5-pound collar on a Chihuahua. So they're very lightweight now, and you have different sizes and different weights, I guess, depending on the dog. Is that correct?
We have a family of products, but one of the great things that we've developed from a technological standpoint is a microlight collar. That collar weighs less than an ounce. So for all those little dogs that are 2.5 pounds, they can wear an invisible fence collar and not have any kind of weight size or anything like that. So we're real lucky about that. And so no matter what size dog, we can keep them in.
And something about the lighter collars, too, is, some of these dogs that have lots of fur around their neck and that type of thing, and sometimes it's hard to put a collar on them because of all the hair and that type of thing. These collars work just fine on those as well.
Yeah, if you've got like an Akita or Malamute Husky, those dogs...
Pomeranians, one that came to mind, yeah.
If we have problems, usually you can pull the hair apart and get the collar where it needs to be. But if not, we just shave a spot so that way it fits really good for the correction part of it. But those dogs that have 2 hair coats, you really have to shave their neck in order to get good connection and keep the collar actually on them.
That's what I was wondering, because with real thick hair like that, they actually have that has to connect with their skin, correct, for it to work?
Yeah, those probes that administer the correction has to touch their neck, and not just the skin or the hair. It actually has to touch a little bit stronger than that, so that way when they get the impulse, it actually reacts to the synapses of the muscle.
Gets their attention. Yep. Otherwise,
it's not going to keep them in. That's the disciplinary part of invisible fence. The key is to train them to the audible sound, but we've got to have muscle somewhere, so we use the correction on the receiver collar. Now, do they get corrected a lot? No, not if they're trained properly. But
right.
when it has to happen and they're running after a rabbit, we've got to have some way to stop them, and that's what we use.
Well, we got to remember, as much as we train our dogs, and some people have very well trained dogs, they still have a natural instinct to, they're not always going to do exactly, just like our children, you train your children, but then about the time you think you've got them where you want them to be, they do something off the wall. Well, an animal can do the same thing. Like I know Tucker minds very well until he sees a bird fly across the yard, and then he thinks he's a bird dog, and he goes chasing after the bird, and I can stand there and go, Tucker, 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 and he has, he doesn't hear me for nothing. So there's certain things that's going to come up that's just in their nature, I think, that's going to be very difficult for them to be disciplined and not do it. So that's when they're going to get the correction, is if they have that impulse that they just can't control at that moment.
The great thing about invisible fence is that it's firm, fair, and very consistent. And that's why it's so successful. Because whether they're running after a squirrel or a rabbit or anything, it is consistent. Audible sound, shock, and they got to stop.
That would be great. I still think that'd be great if we could use that on our children.
I'm not going there, but yeah, I agree with you.
Sometimes as parents, as much as we try to be consistent, we're human beings. We're not always that consistent. So I can see how this would be a great thing for someone who has a situation where maybe they want to be able to let their pet out in the yard and not have to be out there with them constantly. but want to make sure that they're safe and secure. The whole thing is that you want your pet to be safe and secure, and that you don't want something to happen to it, or for it to run off and chase something that you didn't see, and now you're out trying to find your dog. Because pets, for most people, like if they're like, you know, me and you, they're a very important part of the family, and so it's very upsetting when something happens to them or you lose them. And so this way you can keep your family all safe and together and without any worries.
That's exactly right. But you know, another thing that we haven't really talked about is liability.
That's true.
You know, if your dog's out running around and someone tries to miss it and hits somebody and kills somebody, you're liable for that. And it's nobody likes to talk about it,
but it's a fact.
It's a fact. Mm-hmm. And you know, this is just a great way to keep your pets at home.
Thank you so much for being with us, Cheryl. It was a great show. I learned so much from you today, and I think our listeners did too. And I just want to thank everyone for being with us again. Please come back next Friday, and hopefully Mark will be with us. We'll see.
You need home repairs and solutions. Home repairs and solutions. They'll fix your windows, they'll fix your house. They'll even tell you how to get rid of a mouse. Home repairs and solutions.